conscious communication or performative communication or even manipulation. This is going to be a two-part episode where I want to dive into a little bit more what conscious communication really means to me, what I think it is about, and where we may find ourselves saying all the things without saying anything and actually subconsciously try to manipulate people, or maybe putting ourselves on a pedestal. And I also want to talk a little bit more about where this might be coming from. But today, let's just start with what conscious communication really means to me before in the next episode we'll talk a little bit more about where this may be rooted from. Welcome to The Grounds, a podcast with the purpose of being an honest, non-conforming stomping ground where we discuss topics around shadow work, the messiness of our psychic human makeup, remaining grounded in our bodies while staying spiritually connected to our soul's essence, and where we push the edges and challenge the collective hive mind. I'm your host, Simone. I'm a psycho-spiritual guide and owner of Rooted in Between, a place where shadow integration meets grounded spirituality. When I think about conscious communication, I actually think we've complicated it far more than it needs to be. To me, conscious communication isn't about sounding, quote, conscious. It isn't about using the right words or speaking in a way that sounds evolved or emotionally intelligent. It's actually much simpler than that. It's about using direct language wisely and doing our best not to project onto other people, even though we do it all the time, or we all do it at times, and taking responsibility for how we communicate, how our words affect another person, and sometimes even being honest with ourselves about how we want our words to affect another person. Because there are times when we are angry or hurt or frustrated, and I don't necessarily think we have to soften that. I don't think conscious communications means pretending we're calm when we're not, or trying to package everything so beautifully that nobody feels uncomfortable. Sometimes our truth is uncomfortable and may hurt or disappoint people. If we're staying true to ourselves, that is going to happen, and we can't avoid that. And we are also going to be on the receiving end of that as well from other people. The question is, are we communicating from a place of integrity? Can we be direct and still be respectful? Can we say what we mean without attacking the other person? While maybe still also pointing things out that they did that did affect us. To me, that has much more to do with conscious communication. Not tiptoeing around everything or trying to sound like the most conscious person in the room. And even the phrase conscious communication is interesting to me. I think we've almost spiritualized it. We've attached this image to where someone speaks in this incredibly measured and elevated way, and somehow that's considered more conscious. But it's often just, from my perspective, performative language. It sounds thoughtful on the surface, but underneath it's trying to manage how we're being perceived. And it's a bunch of words without saying much. And it can become a form of manipulation. And that doesn't mean it's dramatic or malicious, but just in the sense that we're choosing words not only to express ourselves, but to influence how the other person receives us or sees us or responds to us. So to me, conscious communication is more about asking ourselves, like, am I being clear? Am I being honest? And am I being true to myself? Am I communicating in a way that honors both myself and the person in front of me as much as possible? Or am I using certain words because I want to perceive a certain way? Am I using language that sounds conscious while actually avoiding saying what I really mean? Because those are very different things. There's also this thing where we use jargon. I have a hard time pronouncing this word, but where we use therapeutic language or spiritual language because it sounds wise and emotionally mature or expansive. But underneath, we're still being indirect. We're avoiding vulnerability and are trying to manage how another person sees us. Sometimes we might even trying to manage how we're going to affect them. But that's not integrity. Integrity is when my words actually match what I'm trying to communicate, not when I'm carefully selecting language because I think it will earn me more respect or make me appear more conscious. And with that, maybe try to put myself subconsciously on some sort of pedestal. And I think language is also incredibly limiting because words mean different things to different people. So context always matters, and the same word can land completely differently depending on who's hearing it and what experiences they've had and where they're at in their own life. So I'm not saying certain words are bad, like words like divine and our alignment and ascension or purpose. I'm not saying they should never be used. Sometimes they are the right words, but I think they can also become placeholders where like we start using words that sound meaningful without saying much. And I do notice it in more spiritual spaces. Like conversations become so abstract that nobody's actually saying what they mean, but they're saying what they think they have to say. You know, we're talking about divine guidance and releasing what no longer serves and ascension and frequency in the universe. But underneath all of that, what are we trying to say? Like sometimes to me it just translates, like those words just translate into words that become a way of hiding, often unintentionally. And for me personally, it can give me the ick, especially when phrases and words are being used like that by facilitators. And you know what? Maybe I've been guilty of it too. I actually have been giving myself the ick before. Like I've caught myself in it and be like, oh, I don't want to say that. But again, it's like sometimes the words can become a way of avoid being seen. Because being direct can be vulnerable, like saying I'm hurt or I need this, or simply saying I don't know. Those can be vulnerable statements. And it can just be so much easier to hide behind concepts than it is to let another person see who we really are. And I understand why we do that. We're afraid of being judged or misunderstood or rejected or labeled. Those are human fears. The risk of being outcast, which goes against everything our survival instinct is trying to help us with. But if we continue to communicate in ways that protect us from being seen, then people never actually get to know us. We all have this deep desire to be known and to be seen. But if we're not clear in our communication and direct, people only get to know the version of us that's been filtered through carefully chosen words. And then we wonder why we don't feel connected. Because we can't be seen that way. Another thing I've been thinking about that I want to add here is how often we also talk about centering ourselves or following our path. And I'm completely for that. I think learning to listen to ourselves is incredibly important, especially because many of us have spent years abandoning ourselves. And part of stopping this pattern is making ourselves a priority and really connecting to us, to ourselves inside. That is so much of the work I do with people. But also just taking this into the topic of language. Just like so many things, these concepts can become distorted. There comes a point where I'm following my path can become an excuse to stop considering the people around us. When we start saying things like, I'm just following my purpose, or the universe told me, or this is my divine path. And I mean, maybe it's true and maybe it is, but are we also considering the impact we're having on the people in our lives? Are we still showing compassion? Are we still considering our partner, our family, and our friendships? Or are we using spiritual language to justify not having difficult conversation? To justify hurting people without taking responsibility for the impact? I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think we can honor ourselves, follow our own path, and still remain compassionate and communicate difficult decisions with integrity. And sometimes we have had the conversations. We've had the time to really sit with things and truly honor that we are called into a different direction, and that's okay. But again, context and when we use our language matters. So to me, that's conscious communication. It's not about bigger words or sounding spiritual or more healed, more advanced in my path. And I'm moving around, like you can probably hear it in my voice, the way I'm saying this. But conscious communication is about saying what we actually mean and allowing ourselves to be seen. And communicating in a way where our words genuinely reflect what's happening inside of us. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what integrity is. It's not performing consciousness, but coming back to more simple language and practicing honesty. So that's it for today. And in the next episode, we'll dive a little bit deeper into why are we doing this? Why are many of us not excluded? Probably nobody's excluded. So I'll hope you join me there.